Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the online conversation organized by Dutch Cultural Trans Artists with a topic of hospitality in times of crisis. I am very happy to, I'm really sorry, I'm very happy to welcome our guests for today. And we are here with Vincent Gonzalez, who is the head of residencies at Cité International des Arts in Paris, as well as Soraya Kesaria, who is the residency program and partnership manager as well at Cité. We have a small change from Swan. We are still welcoming Teresa Legberg, who herself is a performance artist, artistic director, and founder of two international artist residencies in Sweden. One of them is Artsy Ocean Gallery and Air on the East Coast, while the other is Artsy Temple in the north of Sweden. Hanna Isaksson unfortunately couldn't join us today, but I'm more than happy to say that we have Power Ekrot with us. She is she's coordinator of a Swedish residency network, as well she is working for Artists at Risk. During the talk, she will tell us a bit more about her position and what exactly she's doing. Apart of that, I'm really happy to welcome my colleagues, Lotte Heaven, multimedia artist and as well working for trans artists, and Heidi Vohels, a visual artist and filmmaker, who is also working for trans artists and Dutch culture. How to start? Thinking about how to organize this meeting or what kind of topic we wanted to put, what kind of topic would be an actual topic to discuss, a topic that is kind of really important at this point of time, but also topic that is an ongoing thing. And then what else is an ongoing if it's not crisis? I mean, we are dealing with crisis on so many levels during our lifetimes, from the energy crisis, the current biggest crisis, to migration crisis, health crisis with the pandemic, refugee crisis. I can spend this whole hour just naming what kind of crisis we've been dealing with. But during this talk, we will focus on hospitality in times of crisis, and what does it mean to actually, from perspective of residency hosts, what does it mean to help out artists in this situation, and how do you do that? How does it work for you as a host, and what are all the repercussions from that? One thing that was fascinating since the war started in Ukraine, I mean, we cannot say that we didn't have refugees coming, and I will focus in this case in Europe because all the invited guests are based in Europe. It is not that we didn't have migration to Europe, people going away from crisis zones to as refugees, as artists, and so on. But it's never the response from Europe. The response from was never on this scale, this fast, this efficient in offering help as it was with the start of the war in Ukraine. And that's something remarkable. It's also something very sad, because you could see that we can organize ourselves. You could see that the political levels can do that, can organize, can be fast, can be efficient, but somehow it didn't happen for the other groups of refugees. And this fastness, this efficiency in responding to the crisis, in responding to the refugees from Ukraine in this case, is also directly reflected in the residency world. Never on this scale we've seen the support given to artists to be able to come to a place and to host them. Of course, that's also because there's been more funding reserved than compared to the other migrants. But what I'm curious to hear from our guests is from their personal experience and how they worked and how they reflected on this situation. For example, I can say a few words from Dutch culture, trans artist perspective. What we did immediately when the war started is that Dutch culture set up a mobility info point that was addressed to Ukrainian Russian and Belarusian dissident artists, where they could directly ask for help and to be um, how to get further into the whatever questions they had, whether that's administrative support, financial, getting a travel pass, and so on. It can go in any sense. We were trying to help them out in answering these questions. So that was one aspect. Another aspect was that we started working together with many international partners. One of them was Swan, as well as Artists at Risk and On the Move. We immediately got together trying to brainstorm and to see what would be the best way for all of us to respond to this and to offer help in terms of giving information. Because a lot of this organization, Res Artists included, transcultural exchange as well, Artistic Freedom Initiative from US, Artist at Risk Connection, also supported by PEN Americas, also from US. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of assuming that most of you know all of these organizations. They do sound they do sound similar, but I will put the links to each of these organizations in the chat just in case. And we were trying to see what is the best way to approach this, to share information amongst ourselves. So meaning not to make lists of lists, because everybody came up with listing resources for help. So we kind of came up with a platform. It's an ongoing project, but we came up with a platform where we could all share info and then filter that info and present it on all of our mediums and our websites. So that was one aspect. Another thing what TransArtist was very much directly involved with is connecting artists, Ukrainian refugee artists, directly to the residencies in the Netherlands and helping them. But Heidi and Lotte will tell you more about that. I will pose my first question, but before that, I'm going to say a few practical things maybe you already saw in the chat. Feel free to post your question in the chat section, and I will try to include them during our talk to our guests. And just for the record, this talk is recorded and it will be published online later on. So these were a few practicalities. And then my first question actually will go to Vincent and Soraya, because CITE has a long history of hosting artists, refugee artists. So can you tell us a bit more about that and how from there you came to where we are, to hosting Ukrainian artists, of course.
Thank you very much, Bojana. It was very interesting to hear you and to hear this evolution, because this is really something we are experimenting at CITE since a very, very long time. First of all, we, as a residency center, because we are a residency center who are welcoming artists for residency, for artist residency, the issue of hospitality is really the DNA of the place since the beginning. No matter where you come, what discipline, which country you are coming from, the hospitality is the DNA of the place. And there is the specific history of Cité Internationale des Arts, who is really, we think, relevant to here today with this issue of what a residency center can do for artists who are unfortunately experimenting, living this situation of crisis, of leaving their country, leaving their friend, leaving their work and everything. Maybe if you don't know, Cité Internationale des Arts is a private foundation of public utility, a non-profit private foundation, who has been founded in ~65 by a man, Félix Bruno. The project of Cité very much reflects the period after World War II and its active promotion of peace. Because since the beginning, the birth of Cité was in 47, just after the war. It was the beginning of the foundation, and it opened in '65. And it was, since the beginning, the idea that the aim was to bring artists of all disciplines the opportunity to come and live and work in Paris in dignified condition and to be exposed to other modes of artistic expression. So since 65 and until today, this is the core of the place, and this is what we are doing and what we are trying to work on. So it's really based on hospitality and welcoming artists from all the discipline, all the generation, all the background. And since the beginning, the issue as it was linked to a post-war situation, the issue of the relation between crisis, hospitality, and supporting the artist was really part of the project. So in 65, one of the first partner of Cité on this topic was the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. And we established with them an artist residency for artists with refugee status. And so you need to know that in July 65, the first artist, it was the Polish pianist Joanna and Jerzy Kajiek, arrived for a 2-year residency. And it was the beginning of this very, very long relation of Cité as a safe place. Cité as a place for artists in really, really strong difficulties, dealing with strong issue of safety and how to still live and be an artist outside from their country. After that, Hungarian, Romanian, Soviet, Bulgarian, and Bosnian artists follow in the step between 67 and it was 98. So it's a long story. In the 70s, Cité Internationale des Arts joined forces too with the city of Paris to provide assistance to Spanish artists in exile. So crisis and long-term relation between this residency center and this political situation and this program for helping artists. And it's very interesting because all this program from 65 to now increased a lot with maybe different, and we will talk about this, different funding, different way of setting the arrival of the artist. Just another example for you to know, in 2011, the city of Paris became an official host for the International Cities of Refugees Network, the ICON network, and we partner with the city of Paris to welcome the artists from the ICON program. So we welcome every year artists seeking asylum from Afghanistan, Yemen, Bahrain, Syria. And in 2021, the Cité became a partner of the PAUSE program, with a very interesting program hosting and providing urgent assistance to artists in exile from Afghanistan and Ukraine. But Soraya will let you know more about this. So all this story is very interesting for us because it's a way to think about what a residency center can do for this artist. We are bringing, in a way, we give the opportunity to be a safe place, to be a place where they have the possibility to meet other artists, to talk about their practice, to have financial support. On the other hand, we realize that it's something we can't do alone, and we need to have support from the ministry, support from social institutions, support from maybe social worker, because we are definitely facing this issue. And sometimes we are talking a lot together and with the team, and we say, okay, it's increasing a lot. We are welcoming more and more artists in exile and in very, very dangerous situation. And more than ever, we need to work together and to not stay alone with this program. But maybe, Soraya, if you want to talk more about Ukrainian, maybe Afghanistan artists.
Yes, very pragmatically speaking, we've been welcoming since 2019 about 20 refugee or exiled artists per year. This year, we're welcoming about 25 artists in 2022. So indeed, the recent crisis in Afghanistan, which started in August of last year, and the Russian and Ukrainian crisis this year has increased a lot our capacity and our expertise and experience in welcoming these artists. So to give you some feedback, Boyana, on what you were expressing, and thank you for expliciting how trans artists has been available to the general questions from the audience. We've been doing the same thing, actually. We've been making ourselves a listening system. We've been making available a hotline, an email address to which artists from Russia, Ukraine, Afghanistan, actually all refugee artists can address their questions, may they be in terms of legal advice, administrative advice, juridic advice, or professional advice. So sharing our expertise with the residency network and with the artists so as to what we can recommend in terms of welcoming and hospitality. Making a platform available for the artists to share with one another and with the professionals at hand on this matter. And we've been thus joining efforts with artistic institutions, as Vincent was explaining, nonprofits, municipalities, state institutions, international organizations, so that we can just share about how we can move forward with the material at hand and assist the artists in the best way. And by assist in Cité, we mean connecting artists with our global network of resources and partners. We mean facilitating cooperations between human rights organizations and artistic art professionals in a very large sense of that word, and amplifying the stories of at-risk artists and raising the visibility in the field of the matter of artistic expression. So that can take the form of curating open studios, curating exhibitions, connecting artists with the right people and with the right communities. So just last year, actually, our head of programming, Natasha Petrichin-Bachelez, has been curating with Porte Ouverte sur l'Art, roughly translated to English to Doors Open on Art, an exhibition called Tafkik in Arabic, which means deconstructing, analyzing, and repairing, about giving the possibility for artists that had been in residency at Cité to recompose political ideas and ideals, not bearing witness of any sorts, but really recompose and analyzing, and at the same time, giving way to what they've been doing in residency at Cité on repairing personal, whatever is regarding to the personal domain, matter to the personal domain. So it's been a very intense exhibition, and my partners and colleagues can testify to that, but it's been really a testimony to what we've been building on at Cité since its foundation, actually. And of course, parallelly to that expertise, we relocate the artists, working with our residency network partners, trying to find ways to prepare the afterlife of the residency. So seeing how they can work after the residency with institutions, staying in Paris, staying in France or not, or with other residency places, and keeping in touch with our partners also from the state and government to keep funding their residency or help them find fundings in that sort of way. So yeah, very anchored in our history and in our daily basis work.
Yeah. I thank you very much. You touched upon a lot of topics on which I would like to come back on this, what you mentioned, the collaboration with other institutions, with social workers, with the support that it's needed, that it's different than hosting a regular artist. I would like to come back to that during our discussion, but before that, I would like to ask Teresa and Power, you can choose whoever wants to first answer the question. The amazing thing about the Swedish residency network in this situation was how fast you mobilize your members and how fast you reacted on the situation, and you managed to secure maybe funding, and then the collaboration with Artists at Risk happened. So can you maybe tell us more about that? How you came to react so fast and efficient, if I may say so, and then also give us some ideas of how many artists you've been helping and hosting, connecting to residencies in Sweden. And Teresa, question directly to you because you are also a residency host. Maybe you can also say a few words about your own experience as a host and hosting Ukrainian, because you're right, Ukrainian artist. You were in residency.
Yeah, okay. I start from the beginning, answering your first question, Bojana, and see, maybe you need to remind me. In the initial phase of SWAN, I was part of the board, Swedish Artist Residency Network program board for 2022. So the network was already a foundation, but emergency residencies is a more personal response to the war. When the war in Ukraine, when Russia invaded Ukraine, started the war, this was action that me and my husband took because our own despair was unbearable. We have 2 residencies, and my history is that my grandmother grew up during the Second World War in Berlin. So she was born into a full-scale war in Berlin at that time, which has formed her life and my mother's life and my life quite a lot and impacted me. So my despair made me take action, and it took the weekend. This was the 24th, and then on the weekend, me and my husband had a meeting. We had some coffee, and we were quite desperate to take action. And we didn't know how to take action in Ukraine because we didn't have connections there. So this initial phase was more about research, and I scanned all the European sites because I know we are also on Trans Artists, Press Artists, these organizations. So I was collecting information and about Ukraine residencies at that point, because Res Artists was also going to host one of the big conferences in Kyiv later on in September. So Ukraine was on my mind already. So in the weekend, we decided that we have to take action. And so we came up with an action plan, which I presented to my board members on Monday morning, 26th or something, I think. And 2 days later, we have a big online meeting with the international organizations. Bojana, you were there, Artists at Risk Power, and Marita Mukkonen, Res Artists were represented. So we had like emergency call for all organizations how we can cooperate. And at this point, we already made a plan for what it would cost for a Swedish residency or 10 Swedish residencies to welcome 10 Ukraine artists. So this is really, because me and my husband are artists too, it's like a peer-to-peer. We knew that we as artists and also residency hosts was capable to do this. And the capacity in the SWAN network was already there because of Hanna Isaksson, Helena Seldren, Petra Johansson created a network which has national reach in all of Sweden from north to south. So we engaged our network and asked them who wants to be in emergency residencies. And then we continued to contact the Artists at Risk, and they immediately said yes to collaborate, because we understood that this can be a artist at a full-scale war need to run, and they have it's a life and death emergency. So we wanted to move away from bureaucracy and a lot of difficult applications for the artist. This way, artists apply to artists at risk. They come to Power Ekeroth, the ones applying for Swedish residency, and then Power and me collaborate. So I contact the artist and connect them with the Swedish residents, basically.
Thank you very much. My last question, because I asked one question and then 5 sub questions to you.
Yeah.
My last question was about your experience as a host, because it's a one-on-one residency, right? Cité has many artist studios, so a part of hosting refugee artists, they host artists from all around the world, while it's more private residency. Can you tell us a bit more about your experience with hosting Ukrainian artists?
Then to welcome our first guest from Ukraine. It's Katerina Seheda from Sevastopol. So she was in Crimea, already occupied territory. It was, okay, so we started Artsy Ocean 2017. So we have been a residency for a while. And yeah, it doesn't matter. So anyway, our Artsy Ocean is also our home. So it's a very intimate situation, because we always have quite a thorough application. The residency artists coming here, we interview them so that we are both on board, both sides, sure that we can meet the expectation of the artists, and this specific residency is how they want to conduct their residency, because we are rural, we are, sometimes we offer exhibitions, sometimes not. So it's very personal meeting coming here. Why I tell you this is because with Katerina Seheda, it was very special. We had like 1 minute conversation before welcoming her. And my biggest concern was that they come from a big city and maybe they will feel isolated coming here, on top of already being in a extreme situation. Because this is also psychological, to come to a place middle of nowhere. If you don't have outside contacts, you can become depressed and feel lonely and cut off from the world. So this was tricky for me to welcome someone which I have not had the prior quite thorough conversation with. But it turns out, personally for me, this has been, and for her too, a very we will now start to cry, but we will definitely be in contact for maybe all of our lives, because it turned out that we started to create art together. So and this was so unexpected, and they love to be here. She has her family, her husband and daughter, Lisa, she's 6 years old. So, and also Glasha, the dog. This is also, as a coordinator, a difficult topic to find a residency suited for families, for pets, for, there can be any type of request that we need to, in a very short time, meet and find a solution for. But in this case, it was beyond what we could expect or wish for. We have had a great collaboration together, and they will also stay in Sweden for indefinite future. Lisa is in school now. She started quite early in preschool in Sweden.
Thank you, Teresa. Also, thank you for sharing this, the personal aspect of acting as a host for this kind of residencies. I still remember in our meetings in the beginning, it was sort of a collective therapy for all of us, because it is impossible when we have this conversation that we are currently having. It's impossible not to get personal. I mean, we can talk from aspects of funders and policymakers, but we have to touch on the human aspect, because this affects us. It affects us all as artists, as organizers, as whatever it is. When you are working with people coming from war zones, it's a very different experience of working. And what you, Teresa, also mentioned, I think pretty much all of us have in our either family history or direct history of experience of the tragedy of war and the destructive power that it brings. And I think this personal experience between artists and hosts was also, we also seen that, of course, in the Dutch field, in the Netherlands, how with the residency organizers who hosted Ukrainian artists. So Lotte, Heidi, maybe you can say a few words about also the meetings that we organized with the residency organizers, but also about the way of connecting artists to residencies.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit like the story of the other people as well. Since the beginning of the invasion in Ukraine, we were approached by artists, friends who were looking for a place for their friends in Ukraine to as a refuge, and that's how it's basically started. I think we connected an artist with a friend of ours, again, a residency in Spain, Cerca residency, and that went really well. And then we started to, because we have very short connections, of course, short lines with residencies in the Netherlands. Since 2003, we also, from Trans Artists, we organize a network of residencies from the perspective of the organizations in the Netherlands. So we know most of the people quite well. So because of this and our mutual contact in Ukraine, House of Europe, who proposed artists to us, we started to look for places to pair them up. And that's, we did that informally, so not like under the radar, to be able to move more flexible. And also because our capacity is quite small from our team in Trans Artists. So, but in the end, that worked out quite, for some people, quite well, I think. Of course, we also have a lot of stories because of that, because we keep in contact with the residencies. And we still are trying to figure out what is actually what it means, for the residency organizers as well as for the artists, and how we can improve things for them, and how can we move also into the future with this situation, and how to be better prepared for next, or how to continue, or how to be prepared for new situations like this. We organized a small meeting, an informal meeting for residencies before the summer, for residencies to come together in Amsterdam and to share their stories. And that was quite interesting, because then you notice how on the different scales, from thinking in a perspective of structure, as well as in a perspective of really personal experiences, how things work out, and how each time that is a very different story. Maybe Lotte want to say something about that.
Yeah, it was a really intimate meeting where hosts were really able to open up about their personal experience being a host for the first time for artists who come directly from a war zone without any experience. And like the last speaker also touched upon, we also found out a lot about what actually moves people to open up their doors. And a lot of hosts turned out to have a history in the family that dealt with either coming from a refugee parents or grandparents or working in the resistance. And so those people came with a whole different set of motivations that came on top of being normally just only a host. But it didn't all go super well. There were a lot of pitfalls and miscommunications, and I think that's also important to address. So I remember from one of the hosts who welcomed an artist. He felt really like, we have all these beautiful technical facilities, so she can work on art to go and process her experience and trauma and be an artist. But that led to a lack of communication in the beginning, where it took really a long time to get together again and figure out that it isn't about being an artist, but it's just an interpersonal relationship that has to be nurtured and is about care and attention and so many other things. And but we also had this very beautiful experiences that we couldn't have thought of. That there was a cinematographer from Ukraine who ended up in a residency, and the host had a completely had a prefixed idea of what a refugee is that was based on what she heard on news. She said, if you deal with artists or workers coming from Ukraine, you really have to give them the space and the time to settle, and you have to basically leave them alone. But this guy came from Ukraine, and the first thing he said, I don't want to be left alone. I want to contribute to this community. And from the second day he was in the residency, he became an incubator between the people from Ukraine who were living in that city and the people from the neighborhood. And he started up a food kitchen with the people who already stayed there, other refugees from Ukraine selling borscht, but also helping others with the basic things like paperwork, translations, that kind of stuff. And this relationship between the host and the residents, or in this case, really grew over time, as the host explained to us. She said, like, we really had to figure out together again what it means, what does hospitality mean. And it doesn't mean having a professional relationship, but basically listening to the story of the other, to the story about displacement, and to connecting to that, and from there finding common grounds and listening to what are the needs and providing those needs. And this relationship turned out to be really beautiful and will also be lasting after the war, as she said. And what we also learned from this meeting is that there were a lot of initiatives in the theater world and in the dance world, where as a first emergency response, people started to offer their facilities to those who fled from the war by letting people stay in the first weeks in dressing rooms or on attics. And it kind of gave a whole an overview of the different kinds of ways you can offer emergency responses. And then it opened up also a whole conversation about what to do after. Maybe you can say something about that, Heidi.
I'm not sure. What are you referring to?
Well, there's an hospitality, there's an emergency response, but now we are at a different phase. It feels like that also deserves attention and raises new questions.
We are still actually brainstorming with each other how to perceive this And because what we learned is that residencies are super fast in responding to these situations because the facilities are at hand, people are super motivated, they are quite embedded in international networks, of course, out of because that's just how they work, you know. So it's not something you have to think about, it's something you do. And you make it happen. And especially when there are not governmental structures in place yet in such urgent situations, peer-to-peer support is then something that is kind of quickly organized. Then when that phase is done, you come, of course, into the situation of all the administrative processes in finding the longer term solutions for the people you have in your program suddenly. And then you also start thinking how to proceed from there and how to keep helping people also, because there are still people who don't have a house anymore, or where life is completely disrupted. So you start looking for solutions. And if those people are, the urgency is not as immediate as in the beginning. So there is maybe also a different kind of structures necessary to how to deal with that. And this is an ongoing process, of course, and we will keep working on it. And of course, this event is also part of that.
And I think what you just mentioned and what all of our guests, Teresa, Vincent, Soraya, what everybody mentioned is that this relationship is not one-off that you maybe sometimes have with hosting artists, but this is an ongoing relationship for life when hosting artists coming from crisis areas, from war areas. What I'm interested in, I would like to turn it around a little bit, because we talk, Vincent, you mentioned, Teresa, I believe on some level you mentioned it as well, is this idea of collaborating with variety of institutions who can help to host the artists, because you need way more support than in any other case. But what I'm interested in is what is the support for you? What is the support for the hosts? Because this is also an out of the ordinary experience for yourself as well. I mean, it's not an ordinary hosting. It's what we talked about previously. It's about getting more personal and getting guiding the artists far more, or giving them the space, or giving finding the realities of living in Paris or living outside in a rural area in Sweden. But it's different, and it requires also a lot of emotional support from your side. It requires any kind of support. So how do you find the network that supports you? I'm curious to hear. Anyone can please take the floor.
I can shortly say how we did it, because one part is personal, that we need our own support system as hosts, which we also implemented in Swan early on, that the hosting, the residency host will need some sort of support group, or in some cases maybe even go to therapy and have how to deal with humans that are experiencing crisis, or in this situation war. So anything can happen. We don't know the state of the artist and how it will change or shift also. But from a personal perspective, we were prepared. I think that this could happen. But funding wise, we also have struggled from our region, did not provide funding in the beginning or at all. So we couldn't really act immediately in the sense that we would like to, because we were open and we had the room, but it took a while for us to actually have the support system from the funding from Swan and so on to be able to welcome our first guest. Then later on it got easier, because Swan was getting the funding from culture department, funding from different institutions or stiftelse. It's
Fundings.
Sorry?
Funders, different funders.
Yeah, so it took a while. So the residencies with regional funding, they were the quickest. They could respond and also fund the residency immediately, whilst we had to wait a bit. The artist-run spaces, if they didn't have a region behind them, they couldn't fund the residency from the beginning. Yeah, that's my response.
I would like to hear also from Vincent and Soraya, but before that, I just wanted to quickly ask Power, because you are also connecting artists to residencies, right? How is your experience? I mean, you're also dealing, I can imagine, with so many different stories and situations. How do you?
Way too many. Yeah. Well, first of all, let me tell you that I'm working for Artists at Risk, and I didn't work for Artists at Risk until the war broke out, and Therese actually summoned us to a meeting, and I wasn't working, but I volunteered to just help out because I know Marita and Ivor since a long time back. So basically, I got drawn into, because Artists at Risk, they get a lot of applications at the moment. There's more than 1,900 applications just in the Ukraine list. And then there's a lot of applications from Russia and Afghanistan, etc., from all these regions that you mentioned. But the Ukrainian one is sort of like, that's where we started. And my first mission was basically to be a bridge between Artists at Risk and Swan. So as I'm Swedish, I have this daily conversation with Teresa, but then I work at Artists at Risk with this long list. But that sort of started since Artists at Risk. They, when I started, they had 29 residencies of their own, but they basically just started to work with all of the residencies that started also to have their solidarity out there and just started to take in Ukrainians, basically, mostly. So I started to matchmake with on the international list, Swan. And I wanted to add that Teresa said that from the beginning, Swan said that maybe 10 residencies. Now we are almost, I think we are over 80 residencies that have Ukrainian artists. But this started like a role model thing for Artists at Risk, that they, when other conglomerates such as Goethe Institute, that I'm also working for now, Spanish residencies that are coming together, they sort of want to have the same model as Swan. They want to have someone on the inside, let's say, who can work and see who would be best placed where. So with that said, yes, I'm working on that 1900 list, but I'm not alone, thankfully. So, but it's still very difficult to get these artists to be matched because there are so many. And like Teresa said, some are coming with their parents or with their partners or with their dogs. So it's not a normal situation. It's a completely different situation. So I know a family that I still haven't found a place for, which have 6 kids. So there are 8 people in, and that's a very difficult situation. So when it comes to support, we are supporting ourselves. I mean, me and Teresa, we have a very nice support system with each other where we can scream at each other, basically. But also when we work together in a team of matchmakers, that's easier because we can support each other. But I think it's a very difficult situation because as hosts or as matchmakers, we deal with the personal stories quite a lot. And it's really draining, it is. but it's not as half as draining as it is for those who apply. So I guess what I would like to sort of add is we really need to address those who are at risk, and not only the hosts, basically. That would be nice.
Thank you, Power. I wanted to hear also from Vincent and Soraya about your experience, and then I see there is a question.
Thank you very much. On our side, there is many things to say and many experiences to share with you. It's definitely true that the situation we are experiencing today is completely different. I remember when the crisis began in Afghanistan, we were definitely facing this topic of family, children, finding the right place with many partners in France. About the support we got and the support we need today, the situation on our side was really interesting, because I think this is the first time that the public, the Ministry of Culture and all the public institutions in France reacted very fast with a budget. And it was really incredible, because we had many funding to set up this residency program for Afghanistan and for Ukraine, and artists who are in a very dangerous situation in relation with the situation in Ukraine. So the first support we got, it's this one, the funding support. We still have it, but we will talk maybe after about the next step. The support we got too, it was a really, really important help for the administrative procedure, because there is a strong issue of paper, of dealing with the French administration, all the daily life and everything. It was quite challenging. Maybe the thing we need to work on, and on our side, for the artists and for many people, this is maybe a psychological support or something to understand, because you are definitely right. We are experimenting a new relation between host and artist, and sometimes it take maybe, I remember one artist in residency, I think it take 4 months to this artist to talk with us and to express why he was so, sometimes really with very strange behavior. There is an issue with language and everything, so we need a lot of translator. And so, but now the situation we are facing, we are, as Soraya was saying, we have more than 20 artists in residency at that moment with this support program. But it's we need to see of what are the possibilities now for the next year, and how we can, going one step further in the support. In 65, I was just talking about the first partnership we get. It was a 2 years residency program. We have the possibility to create very long residency, but at one point, we don't know today how to deal with the post-residency. It's very complicated to find a place to live in Paris and in France. There is the issue of the social housing for the artist, of working, having a work to get his own money. And at this point today, we don't know how to do.
Thank you very much for sharing this with us, because I think this is something that many residency organizers can recognize in exactly what you were saying. I see we have 2 questions or comments, but before that, I would like to say that in the chat, I shared a survey for all of you, for the participants. If you don't mind to fill it in, it would be very helpful for us in that culture. I think Rita van Herven was first, so if you're around, please.
I'm sorry, I'm sitting in the kitchen table and I just stuffed my face with a biscuit. Right, so I'm going to sit on the other side. Actually, I'm on the other side, but I don't know how to change it. So I'm talking more or less incognito in the kitchen, right? You see, I have a few questions, because we hosted 4 people from Ukraine, and we have dispersed these people within the Dutch community at the moment. But there is still a lot of problems with hosting new people. One, they don't fit into our program. Two, there is no commitment from the local government. And because they feel these people have to go to refugee centers and will certainly not provide. There was somebody with washing on. Yeah, it's really quite nice. This actually, it poses a problem also for our team, because as soon as people arrive and they feel they have a roof over their head, they feel people care for them. There is this, I talk to, we have different levels of people. People who don't sort of think, people think they're going to start a new life. People who think they're going to go back to Ukraine, and people who cannot accept their situation. Those are the three kind of refugees and artists we dealt with in our small institution. And this sort of poses a problem on our very small team, and it also poses a problem on sort of psychological help that is not available for artists. Even though as soon as we register them as refugees, some local help is available, but their practice is not developing. Actually, what we are doing is offering them a safe space, like so many other people in our country, offering other people who are not artists, offering them a safe space, and see themselves confronted with all these psychological problems we as institutions are not able to deal with, and let alone all these other people are not able to deal with it. I hear from my friends who, for example, teach Ukrainian refugees and who teach their children how difficult it is to actually even teach these children, simply because in a way they don't listen. They are so geared to sort of, oh yes, soon this will be over and we'll be going back. So yes,
I'm sorry, I will have to interrupt you because of time, and there are two more people that would need to ask their question. I think in any case the questions will stay unanswered, but we will.
I know. It's still an unanswered.
So thank you very much for your input, and I would now like. I'm sure we'll hear more. I would now like to give the words to Constanze from IGBK from Berlin. And yeah.
Hello, thank you. Yes, I'm Constanze, and I have a question on a side issue that was mentioned by Vincent Gonçalves. A bit the question, for instance, for artists from Afghanistan, so people that cannot enter the Schengen room at the moment on the basis of the same conditions as artists from Ukraine can, for instance. How's the experience in France? These people, besides Cité des Arts International, whom would they contact in France, for instance, looking for a visa? And more especially even if it's, for instance, humanitarian visas, who issues those visas? Because I'm speaking here from Germany, and we have the experience that this is a crucial issue, really. Which institution, gives out the visa, and which actors from the artistic field or the artistic scene in the country are involved in that subject?
Thank you for the question. It's true that we spoke with Soraya about Afghanistan and after that for Ukraine, because it was very, in a way, it goes very fast, and we are still working with these artists from this country. But from Afghanistan, the story was a bit different, because when the crisis began, a very strong support committee from artists, from social workers, from the Ministry of Culture, just came and just organizing all with the support of the French embassy in Afghanistan, and with the support of even from the Ministry of Culture and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So there was all a work from Afghanistan, issuing visa from the embassy to make the people arrive in France. When they arrived, there was a support of maybe two associations like the Atelier des Artistes en Exil in Paris and Latitude Contemporaine in Lille, in the north of France. And there was a kind of hub in France, one in Lille, one in Paris, and one in the south of France, to welcome these artists depending on their situation. If they were family, if they were alone. On our side, we welcome only women with no family, no kids, and no husband, because we have the possibility to do this. And as there is many artists in residency, the issue of being alone is really different. And for the administrative procedure, the visa and everything, there is one institution in France. It's the Office, l'OFPRA, Office Française de Protection des Réfugiés, who is dealing with this assistance to all the administrative process, issuing the visa, the carte de séjour, and all the paper. But we are not with Afghanistan. All this stuff has been done in advance. And arriving in France, there was association who was dealing this issue because we don't know how to manage with this, and we do not have the capacity to do this. With Ukraine, it was completely different because it goes very, very, very fast. And it was a group of artists, curators, and people from the Ministry of Culture. We just edited a list of people asking to come. We just cross the name and the list and see how we can do hosting these artists. But it was really an emergency crisis. And so they arrived very, very fast. And now there is this situation of how it will go with the administrative procedure for the Ukrainian artists. Because as maybe you know, at the beginning, for example, the train, everything was free for the Ukrainian people. They can just go on a train. It was free, go travel, social security. So it's completely different, but now this is an issue.
Thank you. I'm trying to think how to conclude this talk, and I can't say I have a conclusion. What I'm going to say is primarily thank you all for doing what you are doing, for doing the job that you are doing, and secondarily thank you to Vincent, Soraya, Power, Teresa, Heidi, Lotte for taking the time to participate in today's conversation. This is just the beginning. We are planning to organize more talks like this, and I'm really happy for all of you who joined us today. I'm hoping we will continue. I'm sure we will continue this conversation because unfortunately there is no end. We don't see an end to this crisis. So I just hope we can continue to support each other and learn from each other, and do the best we can to support the artists and any professionals who are coming from these areas to offer help. With this, once again, thank you all for participating. I will conclude almost on time. I will conclude this conversation, and I'm looking forward to see you all in next occasion.